Welcome to the Creative Me podcast, coming to you from Guernsey in the Channel Islands. Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Creative Me podcast. It's great to have you with me. Today we're going to be talking about email marketing. This isn't the first time email marketing has made an appearance on the Creative Me podcast. Back in episode 23, I interviewed email marketing expert Nicole Murphy. So if you haven't listened to episode 23, it might be a good idea to check that out. So go to martinellis.com/23. Today's episode is in response to some chat that was going on in my Facebook group, the Lightbulb Club. If you'd like to join the club, it's facebook.com/groups/Lightbulb Club. There was lots of talk about email marketing, and it struck me that there are some basics that people might not be aware of. I've noticed people throwing words around like funnel, and gotta love a funnel, and autoresponder, and CTA, and lead magnet, and all these sorts of things. And I just thought it might be a good idea to go back to basics and do a little bit of jargon busting. Why is email so important then if you're a creative business owner? You might be thinking, well, I've got a really good community on Facebook and I've got, 500 followers on Twitter. So why on earth do I need people's emails? Well, what you're doing if you're building your community on social media platforms is you're kind of building your house on other people's land. Because even though the idea of Facebook or Twitter disappearing one day, it seems absolutely bizarre to us, it does happen. Case in point, MySpace. So it's a really good idea to leverage these social media platforms and to create community on them. But ultimately, you don't own anything. So you need to have a way of communicating with those people if, for example, the social media platform disappeared or changed. And that's why getting email addresses from people is absolutely crucial. You own those email addresses. They are an asset to your business. The next logical question, once you've worked out why you need to collect emails, is how do you go about it? There are lots of email service providers on the market. The two that I have experience of are MailChimp and ConvertKit. I started with MailChimp and then I moved to ConvertKit. Up until a certain number of subscribers, MailChimp is free, so it's a really good option for getting started. It is a different animal to ConvertKit though. In MailChimp you tend to produce quite attractive emails. They're HTML based, although there is a plain text option. You only have the option of setting up multiple lists with MailChimp. When I talk about ConvertKit, that will become a little clearer. There are some limitations with MailChimp, but it's a great starting point. If you want to do more complex things with MailChimp, such as autoresponders, more on that later, you do have to pay for an upgrade to MailChimp. So for me, it's a really good starting point. ConvertKit is a paid service, but to be honest with you, if you are really serious about growing your email list and your business is making a small income, there is something about paying for a product to motivate you to use it effectively. Certainly that's what I've found with ConvertKit. Off the top of my head, it's about $20 a month for me because my email list is under 1,000 subscribers. As soon as I hit 1,000, I will move up to the next tier of pricing. So ConvertKit is a paid service. It's very different to MailChimp. It's marketed as an email service provider for bloggers, but honestly, I think it's very suitable for any creative business owner. One of the biggest selling points of ConvertKit for me is the fact that you only have one list of subscribers. And then what you can do with that list is you can tag those subscribers relating to what they're interested in. So for example, if I was launching an online course and I ran some sort of giveaway to generate some interest in the course, I could tag all of those people as prospects, as people potentially interested in the course that I was launching. And then I can market to them in a very different way to how I market to the rest of my list. In MailChimp, what you'd have to do is set up a totally separate list. And when your number of subscribers grows to a certain amount in MailChimp, then you'll get charged. So you do run the risk of getting charged multiple times for having one person on your list, if indeed they fit into different lists that you've set up. That's not ideal in my opinion. ConvertKit emails look quite different to MailChimp emails, whereas the MailChimp ones are usually HTML based and quite jazzy looking. The ConvertKit emails are very plain. You can format them in a very basic way and maybe chuck an image in there, but really they're a pretty plain email. This is a very deliberate decision from the people at ConvertKit. Research shows that the plainer the email, the more likely it is to get opened. If an email looks like it could have potentially come from a friend rather than a business, the open rates are higher. Furthermore, a plain email is less likely to get stuck in a spam filter. ConvertKit also has some really nifty automation features. An example of how an automation could be useful would be that if you were interested in segmenting your audience a little bit in terms of what they're interested in. So you could have a couple of different topics listed in your email newsletter, and each of those topics would be a link. And whenever a reader clicked a topic, they'd be tagged with something relating to that topic. So you'd get a much better idea of what your audience, your readers, are interested in, and you can market to them accordingly. So, that's just one example of how ConvertKit automations can work. It's a really, really useful tool. So now you've started collecting emails, you've put a nice little sign-up box on your website, and you've got a couple of email addresses flowing in. What do you do with those emails? Well, you need to do something. Having emails is great, but if you don't do anything with them, you've essentially got a cold list, a list that isn't used to seeing you in their email inbox. So my recommendation initially would be to set up a monthly email newsletter. This could contain all sorts of things. If you are a blogger, you might recap some of the blog posts you've created that month. You might link to podcasts if that's what you do, if that's your form of content creation. Your email newsletter might contain reading recommendations or a little behind the scenes information about your business and what you do. The key is consistency. If you are doing a monthly newsletter, make it monthly. For me, people live their lives in weekly cycles, so I'm a big fan of the weekly newsletter. But when you're just getting started, I think monthly is a great idea. Another golden rule of producing email newsletters is don't just write, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff. You are going to get unsubscribers straight away. You need to deliver a whole lot of free value before you're entitled to pitch to these people. So make sure you provide lots and lots of really useful information before you even consider making any form of pitch. I explained that this podcast episode was in response to a discussion on the Lightbulb Club. One thing that did crop up that I definitely want to address is the fact that there is so much jargon associated with email marketing. So I'm just going to do a bit of jargon busting now. The first word, the first term is lead magnet. A lead magnet is an ethical bribe. Essentially, you're offering something to your website visitor for free, usually a sort of digital download or something like that, in exchange for their email address. Don't just offer a random thing. Think hard about what your lead magnet is. Make sure it would appeal to the type of prospective customer you wish to attract. Next up, we have a content upgrade. This is bonus content and is usually used by bloggers and podcasters. Say, for example, I'll use an example of a content upgrade I have, actually. I wrote a blog post that was very much aimed at bloggers. It was about the procedures you can set up to write a blog post. And at the end of that post, I created a button which people could click on and a ConvertKit form would pop up, and they could, in exchange for their email address, receive my very own blog post workflow checklist. I'll put a link to this in the show notes so you can actually see it in action. So that's a really good example of a content upgrade. The content in the blog post is obviously high quality, but if they want more, if they want a template or a checklist or something that's going to be even more valuable, the reader needs to provide their email address, and by doing so, they're giving you permission to email them, and in return, they get the free thing. So slightly different to a lead magnet, but same type of principle. Next, we have a CTA, a call to action. This is a thing that makes you click. So usually a button with some text on it or something along those lines, something that makes you take action. I'll chuck a link in the show notes to a really good article on HubSpot with some cracking examples of calls to action. It's the sort of thing that you need to see rather than hear about. Earlier in the episode, I mentioned autoresponders. An autoresponder is a simple thing. It's a series or a sequence of automated emails. In other words, you don't have to send them yourself. When a potential subscriber clicks on a call to action, the emails come out automatically with a very specific space of time between them. You set all that up in ConvertKit or MailChimp, depending on what you're using. An example of how I use an autoresponder is when a new person signs up to my email list. I send out a short series of emails over the course of about a week, introducing myself, telling that person a little bit about what I do, sharing some links to popular blog posts and podcast episodes, and just giving them as much value as I possibly can. And that's done automatically, again through ConvertKit for me. I call that my welcome sequence. Finally, let's talk about funnels, my favorite email marketing term. I have no idea why. A funnel is a specific process, a number of steps to guide people into making a buying decision. If you have an online business and you want to turn people into paying customers, having an email-based sales funnel is a really good idea. It's essentially an autoresponder, but it's very strategic. So your first couple of emails might just be absolutely fantastic value pitched in a way that your prospective customer would appreciate. You might then address some of the pain points and any objections your customer might have to purchasing your product or service. There's a degree of agitation that goes on. Then you'll throw in more and more value and finally make a pitch. It might be a soft pitch, a bit more value, then a slightly more hard pitch. It's a strategic sequence of emails wrapped up as an autoresponder. Right, so that's my basic introduction to email marketing, including some jargon busting. I really hope it's helpful. I think email marketing is, to many people, a huge challenge. So I am intending to pop into the Lightbulb Club Facebook group and do a Facebook Live on the topic, so I can perhaps deal with some of your questions then if you have any. So do hop over to facebook.com/groups/Lightbulb Club and request membership, and I will add you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you'll tune in next time.